In the dark depths beneath the divide, a new horror has been unleashed upon the Mojave wasteland. They are called tunnelers, pale, scaly creatures that burrow underground and hunt in ferocious packs. In the Lonesome Road add-on, the courier encounters these deadly beings and hears ominous warnings about their potential to overrun the Mojave. Could these subterranean mutants become the greatest threat the Mojave wasteland has ever faced? To understand the threat of the tunnelers, we must first explore where they came from. According to Ulysses, the former frumentarius who guides the courier through the divide, these creatures did not always crawl on all fours beneath the earth. They were once human. The tunnelers are the mutated descendants of the pre-war inhabitants of Hopeville, a town in the divide. When the Great War's nuclear fire rained down in 2077, some people of Hopeville took refuge deep underground to survive. They endured in those subterranean bunkers for nearly 2 centuries, isolated from the surface. Over generations, heavy radiation, and perhaps other agents, transformed them radically. Lid designer Chris Avallone later clarified that the tunnelers were indeed once human, warped by heavy, long-term mutations, possibly with the forced evolutionary virus, FEV, contributing to their drastic evolution. In essence, the harmless townsfolk of Hopeville slowly became something monstrous in the darkness beneath the wasteland. These mutations produced a new species, adapted entirely to life underground. The creatures developed bioluminescent, overlarge eyes for seeing in pitch-black tunnels and scaly reptilian skin with bony spikes for protection. They lost their humanity and even their upright posture, evolving into quadrupedal predators that crawl and slither through tight spaces. For nearly 200 years, these proto-tunnelers lived, bred, and perhaps forgot they were ever human at all. They were completely cut off from the surface world, buried deep in the earth, as Ulysses put it. In fact, they might have remained a hidden underground oddity forever, until a cataclysmic event in 2028-1 forced them to the surface. The courier's own actions inadvertently unleashed the tunnelers. In the backstory of Lonesome Road, the courier, Courier 6, was hired by the New California Republic to deliver a certain package to the Divide, a package originating from the old Enclave base at Navarro. Unbeknownst to the courier, this package triggered a chain reaction of disasters. Buried nuclear warheads, left over in underground silos since the Great War, were accidentally detonated. The explosions caused massive earthquakes and violent storms that split the ground open, shattering the lands of the Divide. If you want to find out the full story, you can watch my video on the Divide after this one. In that apocalypse, entire underground complexes collapsed or were exposed to the surface. The catastrophe devastated the region's inhabitants, giving rise to the irradiated marked men, but it also tore open the tunnelers' buried domain. As Ulysses poetically says, divide broke their sky, showed them the world above, and the scent of new prey. The roof of the tunnelers' dark world caved in, and for the first time, these creatures glimpsed the open sky and the wider wasteland beyond. Suddenly free to roam, the tunnelers began creeping out of the cracked earth and ruined missile silos of the Divide. However, they did not spread instantly beyond their blasted homeland, for one important reason. After generations underground, tunnelers cannot tolerate sunlight. They evolved in total darkness, and exposure to natural light is harmful, or at least extremely uncomfortable for them. Their pale, overdeveloped eyes are highly sensitive to light, causing them pain and disorientation in bright conditions. As a result, once released, the tunnelers largely stayed below ground or in shadowed areas, such as caves and the wreckage of collapsed buildings, only venturing out under cover of night or in dim environments. The Divide's perpetual dust storms and ashen skies provided some cover, but broad daylight would still deter them. Thus, in 2281, the tunnelers remained mostly confined to the dark recesses of the Divide, in locations like the buried buildings, the collapsed overpass tunnel, and the cave of the Abaddon. The courier's encounters with them occur in such lightless ruins, But the critical concern is what happens next. Now that they are free, will the tunnelers eventually push beyond the divide's borders? And if they do, can anything in the Mojave stop them? Before judging the scale of the threat, let's examine what the tunnelers are capable of. Physically, they are terrifyingly well suited for predation. A tunneler's body is roughly human-sized, but built for stalking and combat. They have dark, scaly hides, reminiscent of a gecko or other reptile, providing natural armour. Jagged chitinous spikes protrude from their shoulders and heads, possibly as offensive weapons or protective spines. Their maw is filled with sharp reptilian teeth able to shred flesh easily. They often emit eerie hissing or chittering sounds as they hunt. By all accounts, tunnelers move on all fours with unsettling speed and agility, able to clamber through rubble or low tunnels quickly to close with their prey. One particularly horrifying aspect of tunnelers is their venom. These creatures possess a poisonous bite comparable to some of the wasteland's deadliest fauna. Ulysses warns the courier that a tunneler's bite can be just as lethal as a bark scorpion's sting, which is notorious for killing wastelanders in seconds. In gameplay terms, the tunneler's attacks inflict poison that can rapidly drain a victim's health unless treated. Ulysses, coming from the nomadic Twisted Hares tribe, even teaches the courier an old remedy, the snakebite tourniquet, as an emergency way to slow the spread of tunneler venom, a technique his tribe used for scorpion stings. This underscores just how dangerous even one bite from these creatures is. Without immediate anti-venom or first aid, a person bitten by a tunneler could succumb to paralysis or death in short order. Perhaps the most frightening trait of the tunnelers, however, is their behaviour as pack hunters. Tunnelers rarely attack alone. They are pack predators that prefer to ambush in groups, leveraging their numbers to overwhelm much larger or stronger targets. They exhibit coordination in these attacks. While not intelligent in a human sense, they instinctively swarm and flank victims. In fact, packs of tunnelers have been observed to bring down even the mightiest wasteland creatures. Ulysses explicitly notes that when tunnelers are in packs, they can easily tear apart a deathclaw. Seen them tear apart deathclaws. Deathclaw might get some, but the rest will swarm it, tear it apart, like Denver hounds. Ulysses. Observant fighters have noticed that bright lights or loud noises can startle tunnelers and drive them off temporarily. For example, throwing a flashbang grenade at their feet or shooting a flare gun over their heads will often send tunnelers fleeing back into the ground. Their sensitive eyes and ears can be used against them in this way. Still, these are short-term solutions. The tunnelers often return as soon as the light fades, more enraged than before. When Ulysses refers to the tunnelers, it is with palpable concern. He believes that, given time, the tunnelers will spread beyond the divide and into the Mojave wasteland, becoming a danger to everything and everyone there. As he tells the courier, "Death'll come from below. Mojave'll be easy prey for them. They'll start emerging throughout the Mojave in time. Might be years, probably less. They breed fast, hunt in groups, more than enough to bring down the strongest in the Mojave." In Ulysses' estimation, the Mojave would fall not to armies or nukes, but to an onslaught of tunnelers rising from beneath. He calls it a slower death for the Mojave than bombs and fire, but they'll come for its people from where they least expect, below. Is Ulysses overreacting? Or could the tunnelers truly become the Mojave's biggest threat? Let's consider the evidence. The tunnelers multiply very quickly and expand their territory through tunneling. By 2028-1, only a short time after being released, they already infested large portions of the divides underground. It's noted that they form nests as they burrow outward, establishing new colonies in a very short span. Their tunnels act like arteries, potentially stretching for miles. If nothing stops them, these tunnels could eventually reach the Mojave's border and beyond. Unlike raider gangs or packs of night stalkers that stay in one area, tunnelers extend their domain continuously by digging. This means the Mojave's towns and outposts might suddenly find tunnelers surfacing nearby without warning, once the network of burrows grows far enough. In the food chain, tunnelers would have virtually no natural predators. They can kill deathclaws in numbers, as mentioned. They are also aggressive enough to attack other threats like cazadors or feral ghouls. In the Divide, the marked men, ghoulified survivors of the nuclear detonations, learn to avoid the tunnelers. This implies that the marked men, fierce and desperate as they are, do not dare confront the tunnelers. If the tunnelers enter the Mojave, other creatures and factions would likely steer clear, leaving the tunnelers to dominate unchallenged in the wild. How would human factions fare? The NCR is stretched thin, maintaining order in the Mojave. They are used to fighting raiders, legionnaires, super mutants, enemies that fight above ground. Tunnelers represent a threat unlike any the NCR has faced, attacking from below and often at night. They could undermine fences, sneak into settlements via sewers or basements, or simply erupt from the ground inside a town. The Brotherhood of Steel might also be ill-prepared for a foe that doesn't engage in conventional battles. A single tunneler pack could potentially wipe out a small NCR border patrol before anyone knew what happened. If multiple nests established themselves, the Mojave's inhabitants might be besieged from beneath, their roads and safe zones gradually shrinking as the tunnelers expand. Fallout history provides a chilling parallel in the Wanamingos of New California, seen in Fallout 2. Those were also burrowing mutant creatures that created underground colonies and terrified locals. The Wanamingos were sometimes called bloodworms or aliens by wastelanders, and they nearly overran towns like Redding before being hunted to extinction. The tunnelers have a very similar MO, but arguably are even more dangerous due to their pack synergy and human origin intelligence, however bestial. It's worth pulling back the curtain for a moment to examine why the tunnelers exist from a development standpoint, because it sheds light on their significance. The inclusion of the tunnelers in Lonesome Road was quite deliberate. Chris Avallone, the writer of the DLC, has revealed that he introduced the tunnelers as a way to set the stage for New Vegas 2. While we haven't seen any mention of them in the show just yet, it may still be a possibility to see them in future installments. If we ever saw a direct sequel, the tunnelers' invasion could still be a major plot device. The idea was that their burrowing activity and the chaos they'd bring would justify changing the landscape and settlements in a new game. Basically an excuse to alter the world geometry of the Mojave in a story-supported way. Avallone half-jokingly admitted that laying out the Mojave's terrain in the game engine was a pain in the ass, and terrain can't change easily without an excuse. Tunnelers are an excuse. Could the tunnelers become the Mojave Wasteland's biggest threat? From a lore perspective, the answer is yes, potentially. They possess a combination of traits that make them exceptionally dangerous. The ability to multiply rapidly, the element of surprise in their subterranean movement, lethal strength and venom, and very few natural counters in the ecosystem. If left unchecked, within a few years, the tunnelers could migrate beyond the Divide and start infesting the Mojave's caves, sewers, and valleys. They would represent an entirely new kind of menace, one that the traditional armies and defences of the wasteland might struggle to contain. As Ulysses envisaged, they could be an apocalyptic force in slow motion, a creeping ruin from below rather than above.